Good morning everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. I came out here to find some shade, but I'm not having much luck, so we'll just have to deal with it. In this kind of lighting, I can't see the screen very well that's showing me how the lighting is on what you're looking at, but my face is in shade, so we should be good. And it's my voice you're listening to rather than looking at me anyway, so you know. It is day 3 of December, Vlogmas. I am trying to do daily videos for Vlogmas because it's a good thing to do once a year, is to try and do those daily videos for a month and get some momentum up and things like that, but also because it makes me share some of the stuff that I wouldn't always share, some of the kids crafting and all that sort of stuff that I don't normally take the time to record, and by recording it each year I get to see the growth of the kids each year, and only if they want to be part of it, of course. If they don't, then they don't, but it's kind of fun. So this is day 3 of Vlogmas, and because I am such a poor planner and because this is just the way I do things, and anyone who's been around knows that this is kind of the way things go for me, I haven't pre-recorded any footage at all for the month. So what you're going to get is my standard stuff that I do during the month, as well as some intermixed stuff that I wouldn't normally do. So we did a grocery shop. And again, anyone who hasn't been watching me lately, we do a grocery shop every 6 weeks, and we're doing them 4 weekly over Christmas period, because timing worked out that way. I didn't want to go too close to Christmas. I'm already going to be there during school holidays on the next trip, which is kind of sucky, but we'll manage. So we shop every 4 to 6 weeks. The biggest question I got when I started sharing those grocery haul videos, because everyone loves a grocery haul, was that how do we make it work, because we're off-grid and we only shop every 6 weeks. So I started making videos that showed what we do with all the food, and I try and do them every couple of days post each grocery haul. However, in November, I got back from a grocery haul on like Friday afternoon, and then we were evacuated Saturday for bushfires, and we were evacuated again Sunday for bushfires. We got back on the Monday, and then we had another bushfire on the property on the Thursday, I think. So everything got a little bit skewed, and I just didn't get a chance to do much. But I did do a lot of processing of the fruit and stuff, and I always love to share how I'm working with that, and everyone likes to see it. So what I did was I recorded what I could at the time that I could, and have just had it sitting on the computer. So I've collated some of the stuff that we did and written my notes out like I normally do, and I'm going to voice over it. I do voiceovers rather than speech while doing these things, because there's too much background noise. No one can hear me. Perhaps if I was wearing a roadie mic it might be a bit different, but realistically I'm doing too much at the same time. The kids come in and question me about homeschooling stuff. I'm doing all the cooking, but I'm also answering comments and doing Instagram and all that sort of stuff, and everything else. And a lot of the stuff that I do, I walk away from for a while. So it just wouldn't work. Anyway, it's not the way I can do things. And I know some people really hate voiceovers, but that is the way it is. I might try and move again because it is very warm right where I'm standing. I didn't want to go in the hothouse because, you know, it's hot, but it's shady. So this is basically the first video from November's grocery haul, which is kind of sad because we're only a week away from the December grocery haul. But I wanted to share it anyway, and this was what we did with some of the fruit and stuff, so enjoy watching. Alrighty, so as I said, food prep was very scattered this month. Took a significant backseat to life in general after being evacuated for the fires. Each time we were evacuated, I filled the esky with fruit and snacks, like packets of corn chips, watermelons, cherries, nectarines, peaches and apricots, to make sure that we were getting through some of the food if we weren't at home. Once we got back and settled, thinking we were all good, I really had to move on some of that food. The first few meals I cooked once we were home, I didn't film at all. I just wanted real food. I was exhausted, and we just used up all the fresh veg we had bought, broccoli and broccolini, the asparagus, all that kind of thing. The food that we got in the evacuation centre was fine. I'm sure it was fine for a lot of people. It just really well, you've seen the way that I prefer to eat and cook, and it really was very subpar to any of that. But it was food and we were grateful regardless. I cooked up the chicken thighs how we normally do. Sliced them up small for ease of cooking, marinated it in the cowboy candy, garlic, smoked paprika, onion powder, salt, pepper and a little bit of oil, and cooked it all off in batches in the cast iron. So we had it to use for further meals during the next few days. And then the rest of the month from stuff that we would vacuum seal and freeze. So I do this most months. I cook up at least a couple of the trays of thighs like this so that we have this grilled chicken to use however we want over the span of the shopping trip, and fresh for the first couple of days, and over the span of the month after the shopping trip, between shopping trips. And then I freeze some in vacuum seal bags to use as well. I prefer to freeze it cooked because it makes it easier to prepare a meal nice and quick. Because I had just cooked all that up for lunch or breakfast or whatever you want to call it that day, we cooked up the very end of the fresh veg that we had left along with some cubed potatoes, served it with some of the grilled chicken thighs and a generous drizzle of hollandaise. We also had plenty of eggs to work through because we hadn't been home and collecting them, so hollandaise is a good way of using those up, and it's really tasty. We make it either with ghee or with Nuttelex, so we do it as a dairy-free version. Do it in the Thermomix, you just throw everything in and turn it on. It is amazing. After we had eaten, I started work on the fruit that we needed to get going on. First up was the really ripe bananas. So the kids have been eating bananas the whole time, but because of our weather and they're stored in cold storage before we bring them home, they tend to blacken up really quickly, which is fine because we want to freeze them. So I broke them up and filled a baking tray to go in the freezer to flash freeze for us to use for smoothies and smoothie pops and that throughout the month and further. Once they're flash frozen, I put them in Ziploc bags because they won't stick to each other that way. I also had some cherries left. Not a whole lot because I'd shared them around with everyone at the evac centres because I had just grabbed the box because it was a 5 kilo box and I'd eaten a fair few myself. But I decided to make a cherry syrup with what was left. This will be really nice drizzled over the cake layer in a trifle. Darryl really likes it in his Coke as well, and I tend to buy him, we don't buy Coke throughout the year, but at Christmas time I tend to buy him a carton of Coke. Last shopping trip I actually bought him a carton of cherry Coke because it was at Costco and I saw it and I knew he really loved it. But it was expensive. It was $22 for 12 cans or something, and I can buy like a 36 pack for $20 something of standard Coke. So I will buy a standard carton of Coke for him for Christmas time. I do it every year, and he'll have that cherry syrup and he can make his own cherry Coke. But it'll be really nice on the cake layer of trifle too. I'm looking forward to that. I didn't want to pit the cherries, so this was a good option too. I just pulled the stems off, gave them a clean, and put them in a pot with some water. I split a vanilla bean in there as well, and some sugar. I used the Hackett tool to break up the cherries a bunch. This is a Hackett tool. A viewer sent it to me, and I can never remember who it is at the time when I'm going. I have notes of things. Everything that has been sent to me that has a name attached to it, I have notes in a notepad, but I never remember to check them before coming out and doing voiceovers. But anyway, a viewer sent me the Hackett tool, and because I was using a wooden spoon with meat and stuff, and they bought it and they didn't use it, and I use this for everything. It is such a great tool. Fruit, meat, it works wonderfully. But anyway, I used the Hackett tool to break up all the cherries a bunch, brought it up to a light boil. I added a tiny bit of tartaric and citric acid just for preservation purposes. I do this with all my syrups and cordials just to make sure that they are going to be shelf stable. And I believe I went back and added a bit more sugar at one point as too, because I want it more of a syrup than a cordial. We want it thick like a syrup, so cooked down a little bit with a little higher ratio of sugar to it than a cordial, because we're not going to be drinking this as a cordial. It's going to be a syrup. So I added a little bit more sugar to it and got it to the right consistency. Once the flavour was good and I'd simmered it for like that 15-30 minutes, I put the lid on it and I let it steep for 24 hours with the solids in there. Lorcan had asked for rice paper rolls for dinner that night, as we had picked some cucumbers from the garden. So when we'd picked them, he had asked about it. I decided it worked well because we had the grilled chicken, so we had that we'd cooked off during the day. So that's what we had. Some rice noodles, grated carrot and cucumber, the grilled chicken. I made up hoisin peanut satay type dipping sauce to have with them as well, and that was great. Rice paper rolls are delicious, and I love the peanut hoisin dipping sauce, and I really enjoy eating them, but they are really fiddly. So we've gotten to a point where I tend to make the kids one or two each, and then they can make their own, and that way I know that they're getting a couple that are made up appropriately with the right quantities of everything, and then after that they can make up more if they want them. But realistically, you only need there's a big goanna out the garden that I've just spotted. You only need 2 or 3 as a whole meal, so you know, you don't have to make too many of them, but it's still time consuming work. The next day was the day we had the fire on the property. So I filmed the preparation of these beef short ribs I'd bought during the shop. I heavily salt and peppered them, put them on the charcoal grill that Mum bought me for Christmas last year. My smoker isn't working, so it's pushing me to figure out the best way to use the charcoal one. It's still a work in progress though, but I put these on at like midday for eating about 6 or 7 p.m. And then moved on to more of the fruit that we had left to go. I strained the cherry syrup, mashed the cherries into the colander to get as much juice as possible out of them. I then moved on to the mangoes. Now, the mangoes had been put in the fridge, but they were plastic wrapped and some were stacked. It wasn't ideal storage for the span of time we were gone from the property, but most of them did okay. I slice them up how I always do, take the cheeks off, use a glass to get the majority of the flesh off, slice the skin off the pips and any excess easy to access flesh. Now, I'm not picky about getting all the flesh because I use any clean skin and the pips to make cordial from. All the good flesh gets put into a bowl to be used however I want to. Generally it hits the freezer and I use it from there. And then any bruised skin or skin with sap on it gets put aside for the pigs and the chickens, and the nice clean skin and pips go in a bowl. Once I finished it all, I put all the skins and pips that I kept aside into a bigger pot. I decided to add all the cherry pits and the bits of flesh. It will add a nice colour to the cordial, even if it doesn't add much in the way of flavour because it's already been depleted. I can't use the flesh of the cherries and anything else unless I want to sit there and pick all the pips out, which I don't. So I also added some water to the level of solids, and I believe I added a bunch of lime slices, though I don't look like I've shown it on video, but it looks. Turning it on to bring up to a simmer. While that was on the stove, I worked on the flesh from the mangoes. I like to use the hacket on these as well. As I said, it's a super versatile tool. I'm so grateful to have received it. I broke up the mango into like a thick puree. Surreal had requested mango ice cream when I first came home with the groceries, so I decided to do that while I had all the mango available. I did a Google for a variety of different recipes and decided to try one that had condensed milk in it, as we had all this plant-based condensed milk that we'd received with the hampers that I hadn't used yet. And I didn't want to use a cooked custard-based ice cream with the mango. I suppose I could have done like a cooked vanilla custard and then just pureed the mango through it. I might try that another time, but for this time, this is what I did. I put it in a container to go into the fridge to chill before churning it. While that was chilling, I filled the trays with the mango pulp to freeze as well. These Kmart silicone loaf trays are great. They fit about a half a cup per slot, which is a good amount, and they're quite stable too. They're quite a little bit more stable than like the rounded silicone muffin trays. I find these sit slightly better in the freezer and they're a little bit easier to handle and they don't tip as much. I ran out of trays, couldn't find more, so I decided to put some in muffin tins. It works, but it's sometimes a bit fiddly to get them out of the trays, and I don't like to have my trays stuck in the freezer, but I worked with what I had. These also hold about half a cup per slot, so that's kind of handy too. At least I know the quantity that goes in these as well as the other ones, and it's all very similar. I also made some smoothie pops while I had this mango available. I did a very simple banana, mango and milk kefir one, and I'm trialing these new smoothie pop molds. I love my Kavik molds and I recommend them all the time. They're great. They're so easy to get out. They're nice. They have that lovely shape to them, beautiful and smooth. Use compostable paddle pop sticks if you want to eat and all that sort of thing. But they do have to sit flat to set. And with the current freezer setup, it's hard to find the space to put flat things, especially in summer when we've got so much fruit to freeze. So I wanted to try these that are more upright. They take less space to freeze. So far we're pretty happy with them. They're working quite well. I'll keep you updated as I go. I think I just bought them off eBay, maybe Amazon, I can't remember. I'll have to go looking back. But I highly recommend the Kavik ones, and for most people they're going to be perfectly fine, especially if you're not making the quantity that I am at a time. Because I had to find space for those in the freezer and all the mango and stuff, I pulled some bags of chicken carcasses out and put a pot of stock on as well. I used my Buffalo pressure canner cooker because it's stainless steel. The Presto is aluminium, so I tend to try not to cook things in it if I have the option to do it in the Buffalo. I just threw stuff in. The carcasses, carrots, celery, onion, garlic, zucchini. Now, if you're going to use zucchini in a stock, you need to be aware that your stock is not going to be clear. Zucchini will make your stock very, very cloudy, even if you strain it. It's just the way it does. So if you're canning your stock and you don't want it to have that hazy look to it, definitely don't put zucchini in, but I wasn't concerned about it. It's for my own personal use anyway. Salt, some pepper, some apple cider vinegar, and then top it up with water and let it cook at pressure for 90 minutes. It wasn't long after this point, maybe an hour and a bit after that I filmed the stock going in, that we discovered the fires. So once we discovered the fires and we started packing up the cars, I had to turn any burners off that I had running, the chicken stock, the charcoal grill, all that. It had to be turned off because we didn't know if we were leaving. So we're packing the car up, getting ready to go, turning everything off. The fire engine ended up blocking us into the driveway and we couldn't leave even if we wanted to. So they would have had to have moved for us to leave. And obviously if it got to a point where they needed us to leave, they would have shifted. Probably only needed to shift forward a little bit and we might have been able to make it around them. I drive a four-wheel drive ute if I need to, sort of thing. But we were blocked in, so everyone just stayed at the car. I had the kids just sitting in the tray of the ute and around the car, on the eskies around the car and things like that the whole time. The kids were getting really hungry because it was past dinner time at this point. So I grabbed the tray of ribs off the smoker. So the smoker had been turned off, but I just left the ribs there. I think I'd thrown some foil over them, but just left them sitting in the smoke in the charcoal grill thing. Now these the beef short ribs were on sale this month, so they're only $12.99 a kilo, which is cheap for a beef product. But the plan had been to have them with, you know, mashed potato and veggies and gravy and make a really good meal out of them. Obviously, I couldn't do that because I wasn't going to go in there and start cooking while there was a fire burning, you know, 40 meters from the house. So I just went in and grabbed the tray of beef ribs and the kids just sat around the car and just ate the beef ribs by hand off the bone. They weren't quite as fall apart as I would have liked because they needed that extra maybe hour that they would have had if we hadn't had to pack up the car to get ready to go. But they were perfectly edible and the kids enjoyed them. They were a little heavily peppered to be eaten that way, and there was some complaints about the pepper, but as I said, it was supposed to have gravy. So anyway, so we just sat around in the car. We left a couple for Darryl, who was out there at the fire with the fireys fighting the fire at the time. So we made sure to leave a couple for him to eat when he came back in, and then we had something else as a snack afterwards, I think, because, you know, that tray of ribs wasn't enough as a meal without all the sides. I did have like 3 potatoes cubed up on the bench that had never made it to the stock pot. So I had to turn the chicken stock off as well. So I just turned it off and let it cool, and then I will reheat it up again the next day. So in the next lot of video, you'll see me canning that one. But that was the eventful first couple of days of food prep after it all, and it just, yep. So it's been a wild month so far, and then Christmas is, the next shop is for Christmas, and it's always wild that last fortnight for Christmas. Every year I plan so much around Christmas, and I get all the foods that I want to cook and all the rest of it, and the kids just aren't that interested. Like, they want all the Christmas stuff, they want the gifts, they want the food, they want to, you know, decorate biscuits and all the rest of it, but at times it's really hard to get them to even like clean up enough to be allowed to have the treats of helping with the cookies and stuff. Like, they don't have regimented schooling that they have to do in December, but they still need to do basics. They still need to, you know, tidy their rooms, and the bathroom needs to be tidied up, and the washing needs to be done, and dishes need to be done, all the just the real basics that we assign between the 6 kids. Animals need to be fed of an evening and things like that. So, you know, it's not much. It's probably like half an hour, 45 minutes work per child per day. And sometimes it's really hard to get them moving on that. And then it makes me not want to do the special treats. Every year I hope it's going to be different. But so far we haven't hit that different yet. But anyway, I will share what we do. I still have all these plans. We always make seafood salads. We always make potato salads. We always do decorating gingerbread man. Surreal, so no, I think it was Sonnet, asked if we could do gingerbread houses this year, so we'll aim to do that. And I found some really neat cupcakes in ice cream cones that you then put the icing on and makes it look like a tree. I thought the kids really enjoyed that. I have plans to make plenty more ice cream, and I will make the ice cream cones on camera at some point. That was my first time making them the other day, so it was still just very much a learning process. But yeah, so that was the first lot of food prep, and this is day 3 of my Vlogmas videos. So thank you for joining me again today, guys, and I will see you on the next video.